Hello Year 4, I hope you're all well. In today's history lesson we are going to continue with our Anglo-Saxons topic. Today we are going to be looking at who were the Picts and who were the Scots. To start with, I have some retrieval questions for you. I have number 1 and number 2. Both of them have a multi-choice answer, so you can either choose A, B or C. So if you pause the video and have a go at these, please. Okay, then number 1. Which 3 groups of people invaded Britain after the Romans left? Was it A, the Picts, the Scots and Gaul, B, Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands, or C, the Jutes, the Angles and Saxons? The answer is C. Now, I put B in there just to trick you a little bit. B, the Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands, that is where they came from, isn't it? Where the Angles and the Saxons came from. Well done if you didn't let that one trick you. Okay, number 2. What year did the Romans leave Britain? They left Britain in A, 410 AD. Well done. Okay, so let's have a quick refresh then from last lesson. Can you remember anything about who the Anglo-Saxons were or where they came from? Can you just pause the video and have a think, or if you've got someone next to you, have a chat with them, okay? Pause the video and off you go. Okay, then hopefully you've remembered lots and lots. So let's have a quick recap. So we know that there was a period of time when there was no one to control Britain, so it was an abandoned land. Does anyone know what this period was called? Well done, it was the Dark Age, wasn't it? Because why did the Romans have to go back to Rome, do you remember? Absolutely, because they needed to defend their land because they were being invaded by other people, by the Picts, by the Scots, so they had to abandon Britain, and for the first time in such a long time, there was no one to govern Britain. And then someone, the Roman governor of Britain, wanted some protection for Britain, and they were told, no, we can't have anyone to protect them, so they had to abandon the land. And then we know at the time the Angles and Saxons were coming over from Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands. They were coming over by boat, by ships, to Britain they were trying to take the people, they were trying to take the resources, and they would always go back to where they came from. We know, don't we, that once they found out that it was an abandoned land, what did they do? Instead of sailing back to Germany when they'd done what they wanted to do, what did they actually do in Britain? Absolutely, they stayed there, they settled there because they realised no one would tell them they couldn't do that. Eventually, these two groups, the Angles and the Saxons, they joined together and they created one group called the Anglo-Saxons. And they conquered the Britons who were living in England and pushed them north. And we know that they settled, they set up farms, homes and villages too. But there was one more group of people, wasn't there? There was the Jutes. Do you remember where the Jutes settled? Absolutely, the Jutes settled mainly in Kent and they were known as the Kentings, weren't they? Do you remember where the Angles came from? Or where they settled, sorry, not came from. Well done, they settled in East Anglia. What about the Saxons then? So we had the West Saxons, we had the Middle Saxons, we had the South Saxons and we had the East Saxons. They all settled in specific areas of Britain. Do you remember where they settled? Well done. We had the East Saxons, they settled in Essex. The West Saxons settled in Wessex. The Middle Saxons settled in Middlesex. And the South Saxons settled in Sussex. So that is what you can all remember from last lesson. So well done, great memories. Now we know that the Anglo-Saxons, like the Romans, they managed to conquer a large area of Britain, but there was one area that they couldn't conquer straight away. In fact, it took many, many years, hundreds of years. Do you think you can have a go at thinking where this area might have been where they couldn't conquer? Wow. Just like the Romans, the Anglo-Saxons were not able to conquer the people living in the north of Britain. So way up here, that was called Scotland and it is now Scotland. And it was settled by two groups of people, the Picts and the Scots. Now, we've heard about those groups of people before when we were looking at the wall that the Romans built, that Emperor Hadrian ordered them to build. Do you remember the wall? Hadrian's Wall, well done. So they built Hadrian's Wall to keep the Scots and the Picts out, didn't they, the Romans? And that's where they settled. They settled in what is now Scotland. Do you know anything else about the Picts and Scots so far? And what do you think these groups of people might have been like? Can you pause the video and have a think or a bit of a chat? Off you go. Okay, so we're going to learn a little bit more about the Picts and the Scots today. Mostly it's going to be over you to be researchers today and conduct your own research, but we're going to have a little bit of a look more about who they were and where they lived. So this map here on the right hand side of the screen shows where the Picts and the Scots lived when Anglo-Saxons settled in Britain. So you can see here that we have Scotland in this area here. To put it into a bit of context for you, we live around here. Now the Picts are shaded in pink and the Scots were shaded in yellow. So you can see that the Picts had a lot more land than the Scots. There was a mountain called the Grampian Mountains, and it's around about here, this area, and this acted as a natural barrier between the Picts and the Scots. The Picts and the Scots have very different lifestyles. They had different ways of living. There were similarities between them, but they didn't often share the same things. They weren't actually friends, shall we say. And the Picts had been in this area in pink for a very, very long time. They had been there since the Mesolithic Era. Do you know what the Mesolithic Era is? It was a very long time ago. It was 10,000 in the year 10,000, so it was very, very, very long time ago. And the first recorded mention of the Picts being there was by a Roman writer in the 3rd century, which is about 300 AD. And people think the name Picts comes from the Latin word pictus, meaning paintings. And people thought the Pictus they were fierce and they were very skilled when they were battling against people. So they're a very, very strong group of people. And the Picts and Scots were quite similar in the way that they grew things. They grew crops like barley and oats, which would help them eat and to survive. And they also, and to build things, for example, natural resources. And they also kept other animals like sheep, pigs and cattle. What do you think they used these animals for? Absolutely. They would have raised these animals, used them for food, as well as used them for their hides, bones and horns. What do you think hides are? Hides are a bit like skin, so sometimes on specific animals like cows, you can use the skin of a cow to make leather. So it's really, really a useful material, especially for the Picts and the Scots a long time ago. They would probably use the bones and the horns for weapons or making other things too. So these things were really, really useful to the Picts and the Scots. They also hunted animals using crossbows. So they'd have a bow, which maybe they fired. I mean, I don't have one, so it's not that easy to understand what it is. But a crossbow is like a weapon, and it would be like an arrow where they'd release, and it would basically catch the animal, and they'd be able to do all those with it. So they had good resources to be able to make sure that they were eating well, living well, and also defending their own territory well. We don't know too much about them. Historians don't know too much about the Scots and the Picts, but what we do know is that they had wine, salt, glass, and red and purple dyes, which they would trade with France, the country. And the Scots were also very good sailors, and they used the ships to sail between Scotland and Ireland and between their islands to be able to do trading and get resources that way. So it was very efficient the way that they worked their life. However, the Scots and the Picts did often fight each other. They didn't always get on, and sometimes the Picts were more powerful and sometimes the Scots were. It really depended on their army. And there was also battles between the Picts, the Scots and the Anglo-Saxons, because each group was constantly trying to gain more land and more power from the others. So it was a bit of a battle, really, to see who could own the most territory. So it wasn't always them getting along. I want you to have a think, how similar do you think the lives of the Picts, the Scots and the Anglo-Saxons were? And also, in what ways might their lives have been different? Can you just pause the video and have a think or a bit of a chat, please? Okay, there were many ways that the lifestyles of the Picts, the Scots and the Anglo-Saxons would have been very, very similar. We've learnt today that each of their lands was separated into kingdoms, and each of them farmed, reared animals and hunted. So they hunted for the animals and used them for farming and food and crops, what have you. Each of them also, the Picts, the Scots and the Anglo-Saxons, would have worn clothes made from woven wool and leather that they would have probably got from the animals. However, they were different because they had different cultures. They had different ways of living. They had their own language, which you're going to learn about today, their own art, which you're also going to learn about today, and their own stories and traditions. Now, today you're going to be finding out lots more about the Picts and the Scots. And your task today, in your resources, you're going to be given 2 ebooks, one for the Picts and one for the Scots. Your job is to read through both ebooks and really understand what the Picts were like and what the Scots were like. Although they were very similar, they were actually quite different too. And then I would like you to use your new knowledge to answer the following questions here. These boxes here would be all found, the answers would be all found in the ebooks, but these 3 here are your own facts that you've found. Okay, so it's the 3 boxes at the bottom are for your interpretations. When you've done that, and I've wrote this on your resources document too, I would like you to please put your ideas into a poster. So what you've found, I would like you to demonstrate it as a poster, and I want you to make it colourful. I want you to draw some pictures if you want to. Make it really, really colourful, because this will help you remember the information and really process it in a way that you understand it. When you've done that, there is an optional task. Now, we said earlier that the Picts and the Scots have different ways of doing things. They both have different ways of being arty and expressing that art. The way that the Picts did their art was that they had lots of standing stones, and this is what they are here. So they created lots of standing stones, and in these standing stones there were patterns, symbols, and even their own alphabet. Now the alphabet that they use is this middle picture here, the Ogham. So this alphabet is what they used to write. And what I would like you to do is have a go at designing your own Pictish standing stone below. I want you to have a go, if you can have a go at using some of the same patterns, have a look at the patterns they use, the symbols they use. You can even have a go at writing your name in their alphabet, because you've got it all here for you, in your own Pictish stone, and see if you can decorate it in the Pictish style. That's what I would like you to do. So you've got 3 tasks really today. Complete the questions, design your poster and design your Pictish stone. I've also included an optional task. If you have clay or Play-Doh, I know not everyone will, and that's okay, that's why it's optional, but you could even create your own Pictish stone using clay or Play-Doh, and I've included instructions on how to do that in your resources section. If you're going to choose to make it out of a clay model or a Play-Doh model, then what you can do is you can use this as a rough design, this one here, and then do the real design on the Play-Doh, just to make sure that you know what design you're doing. I hope, I'm really looking forward to seeing your lovely posters and your work and your lovely Pictish stones, and I hope you're going to really enjoy this year 4. Have a lovely rest of the day, and I am really looking forward to seeing your work.